Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. A planned auction in Germany of hundreds of personal artifacts from victims of World War II, including Auschwitz letters, personal tools, and items from the Katyń massacre, was cancelled after strong protests from Polish authorities and Holocaust survivor organizations. Now, the incident raises questions about how such collections are preserved, who owns them, and why they appear on the market decades later. Now, to help us understand the history, the ethics, and the context behind all this, we're now joined by Jan Darasz, historian at TVP World. Good to have you back in the studio.
Hello, Sascha.
So we have a recent statement from the Felsman auction house. I just want to read a little bit of it and just kind of ground us here. So they've basically apologized for all this. And then one line that sticks out to me, I'm quoting here, they emphasize that incorrect decision was made when assessing the request to release these items, and they regret any hurt that they have maybe caused. First of all, is that enough for this? There's more. I want to get your view on it. But as a historian, and then looking at this auction house, this kind of statement, should this auction ever have gone ahead? How do you take it?
It depends. Going back to the quote you made there, it depends what they mean by incorrect rather. What is an incorrect decision? Is it based on the ethical dimension, or the financial dimension, or so they've not outlined that, not clarified that. Everything to do with the Second World War, the memory becomes a memorabilia in the end. And there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of ephemeral articles, lists, epaulettes from Katyń, as we talked about yesterday, that are circulating in the market, and they all have a monetary value. And it's just one of those things. It's anything to do with the Second World War, Hitler, Auschwitz, anything that has an allure to a collector. Mm-hmm. And I think it's something we have to not necessarily accept or like, but it's one of the features of our collecting, anything collecting to do with war or mm-hmm. conflict or disaster.
Yeah. But I think because the sensitivity stems from, as you mentioned, the Katyń massacre, Auschwitz, the Holocaust, I mean, these are especially sensitive, terrible, terrible times in history. I mean, we're not looking at let's say, a sword from the Napoleonic Wars, but this is something very, very personal. In many cases, the family still has a connection to this. On those items, I think there were well over 600 different items that were actually offered. And to this, the auction house also has a statement, and they said, well, you know, if we ask now, where do they come from? How did they get these items? And they've said, I'm quoting here, a significant portion of the documents and items was handed over by descendants of the victims. But then it gets interesting. They say, and the remaining part comes from private research collection that was to be sold. As far as we know, all items in this research collection were legally acquired on the open market.
Yes. Again, this seems to be a catch-all phrase to cover every angle of objection to the auction. It's one of these things that every so often, even an item comes up in the auction, international auction market. It's known to be a Polish, looted Polish item, for example, work of art. An eagle we were talking about in the Royal Castle, for example, in the 1990s. It comes on and it's put on, and it's put on an internet auction, and the phrase is, well, I got it fairly from somebody I knew, or it was acquired fairly. And that seems to be the get-out clause that people use when these things turn up.
Yeah, and we don't know exactly the percentage of association here, but let's just say it's one way or the other. Let's talk about the ethics here. I mean, some of these items started selling at around 100, 200 euros. Many people would say, well, they're priceless. I mean, you can't buy these things. This has really sensitive connection to it. How do we balance that? The ethics argument here. Should anyone at any point ever buy such an item? How do the ethics here? And also, let's look at the buyers. I mean, we don't know fully where they all were or located, but let's imagine, I think some of the sources here say that they could have been from Europe, they could have also been from North America. So what about the buyers in all this? How should we treat them?
Caveat emptor, buyer beware. We're trying to separate two things that really can't be separated. One is the ethical problem that a relative or a countryman feels about the emotional attachment to these items, and the dealer just wants a good fair price. And the market has existed since 1945 with the Allies looting Hitler's private residences and getting stealing plates and cutlery, all that sort of stuff, and it all appears on the market. So we can't come to an ethical conclusion that will satisfy everybody. Someone's going to object ethically on a moral basis, quite rightly so. It seems to be a very tone-deaf thing that the auction house has exhibited, a total indifference to the ethical considerations. But to Poles it has a wider emotional, historical resonance, like all artifacts that are looted and then put on, showing them in a private collection or in a museum.
Also, speaking of museums, I mean, there was a call by the foreign minister of Poland, also the Polish president, to try and repatriate all of these items. But I guess the case is all of these items that have historical memory and significance to history here for Poland. I mean, how realistic is that? I mean, if that's one, I mean, there's many, many more. Some already are in museums elsewhere, maybe other collections we don't even know about. So what about this case?
There are probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of items, large or small, that have been looted. As far as I understand it, the Polish policy is that anything that was looted after 1939, they pursue. Anything that was before 1939, so we're talking about 17th century stuff, the ancient stuff that's found in museums in Stockholm, for example, from the Swedish deluge in the 17th century, that stays. Is it a realistic prospect? Probably not, but it's not the argument for not doing anything if you're the Polish government, you're scouring the international markets for these items. They were looted, and the Polish government has a case to get them back. Now, the irony is that you have to pay someone who is in possession of these items who says, well, these were acquired legally, so I want some money. So, unfortunately, like everything, it comes down to what's the price for these things.
You said, mentioning the case for it. Let's talk about that for a minute, because I think a lot of these items connected to terrible killings, mass atrocities. Is there an area in your mind as a historian where there could be, let's say, legal regulation, let's say, pioneered in this way? Is this something that has not really been touched on enough, maybe, by international law, that we should find an area when it pertains to items that are to do with mass atrocities, to try and, let's say, safeguard it in some way? Is this something, a path you could see?
As far as I know, no, there are no internationally binding legal frameworks to regulate just what you've said. And it's a question of definition. For the Germans, it may not be as important as it is for the Poles to repatriate a list, a letter, a postcard. It has a monetary value. For the Poles, it has something else. So I'm not so sure anything to facilitate what you've just said is in fact existent.
But also, I think it's important to give context as well. I mean, if we're looking at, particular here, we're talking about items from Auschwitz. I mean, that was located in Poland, but it was liberated by the Soviet Union. Katyń as well. Also, that took place. Also, the perpetrators, Soviet soldiers. So, give us a bit of context how that also fits into all this and how that makes it a little bit. I
mean, how the Katyń exhibits ended up in Germany.
Exactly.
One theory is that the Germans discovered the Katyń site in 1943, and this was blamed on the Soviet Union, which is quite right. And the idea is that the German soldiers, the thousands of German soldiers who excavated the site, merely took these items, the epaulettes from the officers, that sort of thing, pocketed them, and then it found that's the route it found itself into Germany. So that's the theory. So whether that in fact is true or not, we don't know. We can only speculate as to the provenance of these items, and because the auction house hasn't detailed who got these items, who has them, names, addresses, that sort of things, we can only speculate on the origins and the journey that these items took to find themselves in Germany itself.
Yeah, and I think that's going to also raise some eyebrows there with, as we started at the beginning, that statement of covering various bases of where they got them from. So let's see who is intrepid enough to also challenge them on that.
Yeah, the further back you go, the further the Second World War recedes, and it's still the cloud that overhangs European history, our consciousness, the further back it goes out of folk memory into history. Unfortunately, this emotional context may start to weaken, and we'll see more of these things on the open market, and with a price tag. That's the only thing that counts for a dealer.
Well, but at the same time, I think there's a particular, still national emotion connected to all this, particularly for
trauma.
Poland. So that's why I think it still matters even more here in Poland, and should also be taken into consideration if we look at other countries. Look, we'll have to close it there. Jan Darasz, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, Sascha.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but there's much more coming up right here on TVP World, so don't go away.